Hi, I'm Tony.
And I'm Paula.
We're Liberated Conversations. In this podcast, we're talking reinvention with Dan Mesiti, a successful small business owner here in Sydney.
And the great thing about Daniel is he has also completed our Liberated Leaders Foundations program, which means that he can bring his 20 years of experience in retail, which we would talk about as a disrupted sector, into the conversation. But not only that, some of the deeper learning distinctions about why it's important for you as a leader to reinvent yourself. So tune in. We'd love to engage in this conversation with you in the background, and then join us in the socials at the end. Love to hear your feedback and what you take from this.
Stay tuned. Hey Dan, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you.
And welcome to the month of reinventing. We're in a big conversation with you as a business owner today, and about why leaders should think about reinventing themselves and your story of reinvention. And hopefully you take us deep into the chasm of 25 years of owning businesses here in Sydney. Wow. And anywhere else we want to go in our conversation today. So thanks for taking the time out.
No worries, thanks for having me.
Yeah, Dan, why we invited you into our podcast conversation is because you really show up to us as a guy who's been in retail a long time, right? Like since you were 18 years old. I'm not going to disclose how old. I was
going to say that's only not that long ago.
But the reason why we were really keen to get you in conversation is because you've been in probably one of the toughest sectors that I know, in my opinion or assessment anyway, which is retail. And since that tender age of 18 that you entered that space, is that there's been so much happening economically in Australia that the first sector, the first industry to be impacted by that is retail. But you've in some way navigated, you've survived, and not only survived, you've thrived. And we're really keen to understand and learn from you, oh great guru, master of retail.
I think that's why I came to you guys, actually. It's kind of what led me to you guys in the first place.
Yeah, that's right.
That journey of wanting to improve and keep up, or be ahead of the curve, as it were. Yeah.
And has that been an orientation of you, for all those years, as to wanting to keep ahead of the curve?
Like really has, actually. I don't know how I would have labelled it when I began, but I know, after studying business at uni and getting into the cafes in the beginning, there's just always that thing going on. I want to improve, I want to learn. And so we started in cafes, and you just look around and how to improve. And you just have to adopt that mindset and consistently. And it was survival too. I identified early on that if we didn't, we'd sink, because it's a fast moving game. So that really has driven my career for a long time, and created some big challenges. We've been good at it and we've been bad at it, but it's never ending. You can't rest from my point of view.
Dan, it would be really good for you to take us on a short journey through, if you can remember all of those elements of your career. Like, where did you start out? Why did you get into retail as an orientation? Was it inspired, or was it more, through desperation?
It was a way to pay for uni in the beginning. So I went to university. You start out in retail like most people do, and then just accidentally forgot to get out to travel the world, which is fantastic. Then got back, and kind of my good friend at the time and I, and best mate, we said we're going to do all these fantastic things together, and landed on a cafe, which he'd been doing before I came back to Australia. And so we started our own one together, and that was just the beginning of the journey. And that's been in business for probably 20 years. Over 20 years, actually. And
what's special about what you just shared is you and your then business partner are still in business today.
Yeah.
And that you've been partnered, had children, lived lives alongside each other. I dare say that it hasn't always been easy to be business partners and good friends as well.
Just as challenging as retail.
Yeah, so I'm sure that there are people that
appreciate that.
I'm sure there are people that are tuning in that have gone through this kind of challenge of how do we keep it together? And yes, we're invested together, but how do we keep it together?
Such a good point, actually, because that's really pivotal to part of our success, and it's also pivotal to massive failures, partnerships. It either kind of 1 + 1 = 3, or it's 1 + 1 = 0. It's very polarizing, and I know a lot of networks don't like partnerships for that reason. Franchises included, if you investigate. Because it's a powerful commitment And you do need to reinvent your own relationship. It's just like a marriage in some respects. The effort that goes into it and respecting each other and building on strengths, and that's been a huge journey as well. And something that Liberated, the Foundations course, was actually really, really powerful at helping us navigate and made some really profound changes, and all for the better.
Dan, I'm wanting to understand a little bit more about your success before we go into those areas of your life that in partnership with your business partner that may have been not such a success at the time, but it was and it still is a successful partnership. And you've spoken a little bit about that, all the ups and downs of partnerships, and really have to work hard to make it work. But what have been some of your successes, particularly in your current business or businesses that you own? Would love to hear a little bit more about that, what you're currently doing, and what are some of those successes, that you have both achieved?
Oh, God, tough to answer. It depends how we look back. But surviving this long in business has been one of the biggest things, because it's a journey that people burn out. So there's like a 3-year, then there's the 7-year itch. There's these hurdles that you see in life where people either burn out or they break through. And we've had to do that multiple times. And we started out in cafes, and then we looked ahead to a future and thought, I don't know if that's where we want to be. We need to pivot, and moved into franchising, thinking there was a better way and more to learn. And we were young enough and we were hungry enough to want to keep learning, and that was a really good transition. And then we've made probably some of the worst purchase decisions we've made when we started out, and so that set us back a few years. So at the time, it didn't feel like a learning opportunity, but looking back, it was one of the most powerful things that ever happened to us. It certainly taught us how to survive and how to really knuckle down, because you need those skills. All the cute talk in the world won't save you if you can't dig yourself out of a hole sometimes, just with sheer tenacity and hard work and self-belief, because no one's going to bring it to you. And so getting through that and just building relationships throughout that with the franchise we're involved with, and was really profound and enabling for us to do that. And then as we've grown and expanded and we've taken on different brands and different challenges, there's a lot of, I think, pride for both of us and some of the things we've overcome in that regard. And just managing multiple brands all at once under one roof. Now we're back to 5 stores. We've got a good little business that we're really happy about, great teams, and you derive, I think, a lot of satisfaction when you can build a team of, at one time it was probably close to 90 staff, and you're building a positive workforce, and you feel like you're adding a little bit of value. So there's some of the highlights.
So I'm sure that our listeners now are going, yeah, but who are you? Like, what do you do? What are your stores? What's the brand behind all of this? So you're going to have to
come out of your shell.
So right now we have 5 Boost Juice bars.
Right.
So we started with Boost Juice in 2005. So we're probably one of the oldest franchisees in the network. That's been a kind of a great journey with a great brand, and I love that we're still passionate about it. And they're still reinventing and going back long enough to know the founders and have a relationship, and it's been a kind of inspiring and learning journey. And it's a great Australian company with a good story to tell, and it's been really nice to be a part of, and something we can be proud of, and we've loved that. I think it's important to do something that resonates with who you are, and it shows in the way you run your business and the decisions you make and who you're hiring and how you're communicating and how you operate. So the Boost Juice bars are kind of what we're involved in. My business partner's also got some Tommy Guns barbershops, which are a wonderful growing brand, led by some really wonderful people as well. So they're involved. So we have all those lessons involved, and I'm obviously helping and involved with that. We have a great open relationship with what each other are doing, and that's really positive. So that's keeping us busy at the moment.
Beautiful.
And coming into the summertime now, something that is always with me when I think about Boost Juice, I think about the young people coming through, you know, the kids that are coming out of school, or the people that want part-time work, or the uni students just like you, starting out their career in retail. How has it been to manage that younger workforce? And, you know, as the years click on and we get some grey hairs, then you've got to think about this showing up as a bit of a gap. And what have you seen coming through as the different things you've had to do as a leader to be able to create a condition for them to thrive inside the Boost Juice environment? It's a big question.
Because he could be probably known to that generation as a bit of a crusty.
Yeah, he's old.
Even though he's...
Exactly.
That's right.
Well, I've kind of battled that with immaturity. It keeps you young. It really does. Having these kids come up. There's a few things, though. I'm challenged by some of the stuff I read about the generational differences, and we've got all these labels from Gen Y to X to the millennials, and a lot of it's accurate. There's definitely some differences how they present and show up, but there's a few things about human nature that don't change, and they're the things that I guess I lean into more. We've had to adapt the way we communicate to the team and the way they're leading their lives, and we've onboarded rostering programs that give them the flexibility they really crave in their life, and really powerful changes like that have made a big difference in their engagement.
So Dan, for the young people that are coming through over the last, say, 2 decades, have you noticed a change in what they expect in terms of flexibility? I mean, do they expect more flexible work arrangements now, or is it the same as it was before? What do you see coming through as someone that's on the ground watching this? Good question, and it's dealt with a lot in retail. Every conference I go to, we have someone presenting about the descriptions of and labelling of all the generations of X, Y, millennial. And they are changing. Flexibility is becoming important. But I guess I always have found that there's a couple of human values that don't change. They want to feel valued, they want to feel engaged, they want to do something they believe in. And when we switch on as employers and bring them on the journey and get them to come to work with your mind, with your soul, you don't have to leave it at home. You know, I want all of you, and I want you to come on the journey and be a bit better when you leave than when you started. And there's a lot to learn, and we can teach you that will be valued right throughout your working life. That won't necessarily change. How we deliver it and when we deliver it is changing. They want just-in-time learning is pivotal for kids these days. They don't want to sit down and do necessarily 3 to 5 year degrees. They just want to go, yeah, this is what I need when I want it. So we do have to adapt, but I don't think human nature is changing as fast as the methods we're using to get across.
You're pointing towards something there, Dan, where you mentioned before about, you know, millennials and Gen X, Gen Y. I mean, it's a label that we give people, right? But what I'm hearing you say is that, well, you don't really treat people as millennials. You treat them as people, as human
100%.
Beings with desires and needs, and that they can connect to a purpose that suits them in the moment, you know. And
it's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, well, I hear a lot, or we hear a lot about the labelling of people, you know, and it sort of boxes them, and we can objectify people very quickly by the labels that we ascribe them. So I really like what you're up to and how, and I know that you've spoken a lot about, you know, your people who work with you, that you're deeply, deeply care about, you're passionate about. And I know that you spend a lot of time investing in building skill, building rapport for the sake of how they treat the customers to get that repeat business.
It's all about that journey with us and getting them on board and crafting that journey with them.
Yeah, so you've got a secret sauce, I think, because you've won a number of awards, hey, as the... Like share a little bit about, you know, the awards, and I actually want to know a little bit about that secret sauce and how to engage people fresh out of university or during university. Like, what is that?
I think it's a good question. It's really just a lot about care factor and authenticity,
right? And
making an effort. You know, there's a lot of small businesses out there where the owners don't show up. You know, I've employed kids from other businesses and they've never met the owner, and they'll be seeing me in there 5-6 days a week in uniform, standing beside them, asking them how their day's going, looking after their concerns, asking them what they want to be doing in 6 months when the time's right. And that makes a difference. And we're always on a bit of a journey and giving somebody a chance to grow and having a bit of belief in them, and from the most unlikely places too. It's really, you kind of have to learn how much you don't know about people when you start asking questions, the right questions. And kind of breaks down some of the things, because you have these stories in your head about this type of person. You make assessments with people all the time, and it's great to challenge that and just shut up and listen. And where do you want to be? How can we do that together? Because we're a pretty good brand with good opportunities within our little space. And I think most importantly in this age group, if we can just help build some of their self-esteem and build some life skills and work skills, I'm not going to be teaching them huge financial skills like a lot of big business may or may not, but they certainly can get the foundational stuff that'll help them grow into that. And so that's kind of a little bit of a goal I think Ant and I, my business partner, kind of concentrate on.
And what are some of the awards or your successes around the way that you've engaged people to, show up well, represent your brand, get people coming back? Like, what are those awards?
Well, I guess it was actually, I guess originally one of the highlights for Anthony and myself was when we won the Hall of Fame award for Boost Juice. Back, I think it was around 2009. And that, I think, Jeff Ellis, the founder, walked in one day and we're doing this meeting, and it wasn't being done a lot at the time. We had all the kids in a room, and it was just about a leadership development day. And we knew it was probably quite primitive, if we look back, but it was just a beginning. We just knew there was something there. I don't think we knew what we were doing, but we just knew we wanted to make them better. And it started with us, and it kind of makes you better doing that. And that was the journey. And then they asked us to pitch in to go for some awards. So we did win Partners of the State, Partners of the Year within Boost, and then we won the Franchise Council's Franchisees of the Year for the multi-site category for all of Australia. So that was a really good achievement. It took us about 3 goes. I think we won the state one twice, and then the third time we took out the national award. So we were pretty happy about
Congratulations,
that. Yeah, it was a good journey. Thank you.
Congrats.
Thank you. And just the process of going through that makes you analyse where you've come and how much you've had to adapt and change and grow. Because there's some great businesses out there going for it and competing. And just talking to them and meeting guys like that and just getting out of that shell that happens when you're in business for yourself. That was really positive. That was great.
So I'm thinking about, that was a few years ago that those awards started to come through, and that was around the time I think we might have met on Victoria Avenue at Chatswood planning one of those development days.
Yes, that's true.
And then all of a sudden the conversation switched and we started to talk about your development because kind of you're at the top of the tree in terms of your award cycle, and we started to talk about what comes next for you as a leader and what comes next for you and Anthony in terms of the way that you want to lead and cultivate the new skills and practices for your growing teams. So what was provocative about that conversation for you in light of here you are, you've got 90 people working for you, you're rocking it, and yet there's still something that's saying keep leaning in. There's something else here for me. What was that about?
The easiest answer to that is something we spoke about earlier, is about retail and the disruption in retail. And it's just like a cloud that will on the horizon that will never go away. It can feel like that when you're in business. This threat, this constant change, evolution online is threatening retail or bricks and mortar, and it's been coming for a long time. And you just have to be kind of at the forefront. You always have to have a foot forward, leaning in, as much about survival, because I see too many people kind of get to a point of success in small business and then plateau. And just got to be wary of the plateaus and how to break through. And I just have this inbuilt, I guess, lucky or unlucky, probably annoyed a few people over the years, but I start getting idle. I'm not good idle. So it's like, okay, what's next? I need to, invent and grow. I'm going to get bored if I don't. And so I've had that drive to constantly seek and learn. And it was just that conversation where I think I came to you and said, I'm doing this leadership day. I want you to present, you guys to come and help me. And you're like, actually, we want you to come to our leadership. And
let's do a deal.
Yeah, let's try.
And what an amazing kind of opportunity that came up out of nowhere. And that's kind of the beautiful part about being open to change like that. It can change the landscape.
Just on that, I mean, you've said a lot of words about leaning in and, disruption and what it takes, but that's no way describes the experience, though.
No.
I think that this is a worthy segue into some questions that we've got for you around that, around a little segue that's been created around Liberated Leaders about we inviting you into our program while we assisted you with yours. But I'm wondering about you coming into Liberated Leaders. How was that experience for you? And not looking for anything particular, Dan, just to begin let's go off on another tangent and connect it back to what's happening in your retail world.
That was a big change. It was very profound. Like it came across to me as profound. It was kind of deeper than I expected, and it took a lot more personal work. I've coming from small business in retail, everything's quite pragmatic. Yeah. So you're looking for things to learn. And it's like, I want to learn that and bolt it on, and that's going to help me improve and get to the next bit straight away. Which is useful and has a place, but it's making the business sometimes better without making you better. And you are the business in many cases in small business. So
good point.
If you don't grow, the business doesn't grow. So just back to that plateau point, this was the personal plateau will kind of roll over into a business plateau. So I guess it came to me after the fact. You don't always have the wisdom leading into things, doing new things like that, right? Like none of us are that smart. It terrified me for a bit at the beginning. I thought, I can't do this. I don't understand it. Bloody hell, what are we doing? But then, you'll do some of the practices we did and some of the explorations. And I remember Anthony and I walked away and did one together, and it's just this 45-minute exercise, and 3 hours later we were still talking.
So you and Anthony did it together. You chose to say, let's go develop together because there's a new horizon.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even though you didn't quite know what was over that horizon.
I had no idea in hindsight. I thought I had a bit of an inkling going into it, but looking back.
What a brave thing to do, to say to your business partner, let's go do this together. Was he overjoyed?
Although, probably a little bit of trepidation in there, but probably I think what he didn't know, what neither of us knew, was probably better. But it was really about that commitment to improving our business partnership as well. And I guess I felt, because I've known from experience that you can come down like Moses off the mountain with something you've learned, and it doesn't always translate, depending on how good you are and how much you've embedded it. And so to come back to someone so pivotal to my business and go, well, I've learned all this great stuff and now we have to do this. I was like, no, you need to be on this journey. You need to come up the mountain. We've got to climb it up together before we can come down the other side and go, rightio, we're guns blazing. So, I knew it would take. I really wanted to share it because something so profound, it's good to have a learning partner, especially someone so close. And it didn't come easy. It did not come easy.
The conversations were
difficult? Any of it, really.
Right.
The learning.
Concepts,
Yeah. And Anthony would tell you he was challenged by parts of it, as were I in the beginning. And as you guys know, I did the course a second time around, and that's when things really kind of cemented and how that was so profound, so great to reach that point.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, Dan, before we started the podcast, around, and I've said to you, I'm going to ask you a question at some stage, and I don't know when I'm going to ask it, but here it is, because I want to connect it to what we're talking about here, about your experience at Liberated Leaders, but I also want to connect it to partnerships, relationships. And I asked you, how would you define, retail and disruption? How would you define that from your own experience?
Good question. It's hard to give a straight answer because, but it has felt over the years, like I said before, by the time you get to the end of the sentence, it's already expired. Things move so quick. And obviously day to day, you're showing up and you're doing the same thing, but it's the subtle shifts that can be the most profound that you miss until it's a year and a half after it happened. And that's why it's really important to identify with a business and a brand and yourself that is constantly on the lookout, because if disruption feels like disruption, and if you're resistant to it or you're scared and you want to circle the wagons, it's always going to be challenging and you just put your walls up to change. But if you're looking for opportunity, disruption to me feels like opportunity. And it's a huge mind shift. And it's a cute sentence, but in reality, it actually makes a difference. If you're on the hunt and you're looking, you'll go out of your way looking for disruptive things because you realise you need to change. But if you don't see the need for change or you're scared of change, it's going to hold you back. And I've sat on both sides of the fence, probably one a lot longer than the other, to be perfectly honest. And it's not something that, for me, I guess, I don't want to appear like I'm every day, just as calm as Buddha. Some days I'm scared and doing the wrong thing and I'm challenged by everything, and other days I think, no, I've got this. And you become more mindful of your mood and your mentality and how I can present and embrace things a bit better and just have the courage. It takes a bit of self-esteem, and that's one of the big outcomes from the course, is just learning to believe in yourself.
Dan, when you talk about disruption and it changes at the end of the sentence, but we can sort of ask, well, what changes? Well, we claim everything changes, even our relationships change. As our world around us is reconfiguring, it's not only the market that we exist in or the context that we exist in. We're part of an ecosystem, if we can look at it like that. Our relationships change as well, so which require us to have different kinds of conversations to remain relevant in those moments, to keep that partnership together, to deal with the disruption and unsettlement that's happening. Could you talk to us a little bit about, your experience coming through Liberated Leaders, what this has opened up you to in terms of your ability to open out weird and wacky conversations that you perhaps would never have dreamed of before, but were necessary now from where you stand at this standpoint?
I can. There's always one I come back to. It happened very early on during the foundation program in the first year, and we had that exploration to go down and have a meeting with one of our staff. And when you're in small business, you usually walk in with an idea of how it's going to go. Here's what I want you to hear. Here's the outcome. It's all prescribed, and shut up and listen and we'll be done in 15 minutes. And you like to think you're more open-minded and that. You don't really go in always thinking like that, but that's, I think, the way it can come across. And so we did this new challenge, sat down and opened up a conversation, and I remember this girl said to me, okay, so what are you here to talk about? I said, I don't entirely know. We're just going to have a conversation. Let's see where it goes. And it started out a bit wacky, and I've never done anything like it. And we ended up talking about my experience at Liberated Leaders because of how it was impacting the conversation. And for the first time, she pulled out a pen and paper and started taking notes. It was like a dream come true. You think you're clever and you've got all these good things to say, and you deliver a team meeting and people just nod and walk away. And then you sit down and have this open-ended conversation with someone, and they pull out a pen and pad and start writing. And it was quite a profound shift. It was such a huge lesson that day, and it didn't feel like I was saying anything smart. I was only relating what I was learning. I was sharing my learning journey. But it was so profound for her that she wanted to record it and onboard it, and for her own sake and for the sake of the business. And I just realised that sometimes what I think people need to hear is incorrect. Let them guide the conversation a little bit. Let them talk to you about how they're feeling and what they want. And I guess that was for me just the very beginning of what I learned about learning to listen.
Right.
And how profound that was. So sorry to everyone who I didn't learn that lesson before.
I think we're all guilty of not being, overly good listeners, despite the fact that we may think we're good listeners.
So Dan, it sounds like that a couple of years ago you started down a pathway of what we would call reinventing. Creating yourself as relevant for the future that is still emerging, that moves very quickly. You're still in retail, and yet there's something else that's brewing on your horizon. Why should, if there are business owners out there listening in, what are some of the clues you can give them, or some of the reasons that you can identify for them that they might want to think about reinventing themselves? What is it all about? Why would they even entertain the idea of doing this? Because it's not easy work, right?
No, it's really not.
Because so far you've referenced a few conversations, and they were all challenging in their own right. Liberating, no doubt, but challenging at another level. So why would we bother even thinking about this if we own a business?
Look, there's, I guess, part of that drive, I guess early on, you could talk about it in terms of survival being dramatic, but it's really about understanding the link between you and the business and keeping it alive. I mean, you want to keep yourself open up to opportunities in the business, to growth in the business. You've got to avoid burnout, because if you don't reinvent yourself, you get tired, you get stale. And it's so critical. I see that more than anything. I've watched that in family businesses and the struggles and tribulations of it, and understanding how it impacts people, and kind of just, they quietly kind of go to sleep, or they're just frustrated and they just become resigned about the situation, the business.
Dan, talk a little bit more about that, because that's interesting when people become tired and fatigued. But what's the impact on, you know, their people, their business? Like, what do you see as a business owner?
So I guess from personal experience, I've watched people in business, they get fatigued and they just see roadblocks in the business they're in. So they're experts in that business. They're very powerful, but it's a lot of it's mental. So they start looking left and right for other opportunities in other areas.
Like a distraction?
Correct. Well, it just feels like, okay, that's too hard. I just want to go over here now and play. And I'm going to start in a new thing. And so everything's, the grass is green in the beginning, but boom, roadblock. And a year later, they're back. And I've just looked around and even read that a lot of successful people do focus on what they're good at and where they're good at. But you've got to keep getting over those hurdles, because they're going to be everywhere you look. But it just feels like in your circumstance that it's much greater here because this is where you're playing on that field. But it's always everywhere else as well. It's just that you're starting over and it's going to take you a little longer to find the first one there. And there could be good reasons to change as well, but just make sure it's the right reasons and not born from that fatigue, from that stress, from that lack of reinvention. And it sounds dramatic. I was thinking before about that word reinvention. It is powerful, but it's intimidating too. If I went back to Dan a couple of years ago and said, you need to reinvent yourself, that feels like a big thing to do. But it's just 100 little steps. And then you look back and go, actually, I just started. Or I'm in the middle of it, or I'm going through it and it feels good.
Or one little step every day. You know, and as soon as you start talking about fatigue, I think about the automatic thinking that we have. You know, of something pops up as a barrier, and automatically we have a judgment or an opinion about that, and that can either be positive or negative. And if it's negative, hello, path to fatigue. But then also Tony and I, we were fondling through a book the other day, and it was called Match Fit, and this author so beautifully outlines what it's like decade to decade as you get sucked into the vortex of being busier and more commitment, and how you give away these little pieces of your life.
That's so true.
And I saw a direct relationship between, as you give away those pieces, you also give away a little piece of your mindset if you start to convince yourself that there are fewer and fewer opportunities. And it's exactly the opposite mindset that you need if you're going to own a business, because you need to keep saying there's more opportunities and there's possibilities, and that is the kind of leader that people gravitate to.
So Dan, I'm curious around that. You know, you would have found yourself, I'm sure, as a businessman, you know, in fatigue or on the borderline of that, lost your focus, wanting to divert your attention somewhere else.
More than once.
But what are some of the guiding principles or the tips that you could share that's really helped you over your time as a businessman, that get you back on track, that get you back in the game, that get you hungry?
So, good question. Challenging yourself with learning is a good one for me, and that's been a bit of a go-to over the years. I feel we need to step out of it sometimes. Sometimes you don't necessarily need a career change, you just need a break. And probably haven't taken as many holidays as I should have over the years. But when you do, you really feel it. Finding that creative outlet and having that inspiration and creativity come back to you when you do engage in something new in that side, because I guess it's about who you bring to work, right? And you're bringing everything to work. There's no kind of home Dan and then a business Dan. It's all of Dan coming to wherever he is. And so if you're working on the personal stuff, it's going to show up everywhere else. And
good point.
So if you're developing yourself as a learner in a space, if you're going to bring that fresh attitude to work, and just as importantly, you expose yourself to different people. You know, that old saying about, if you want to know where someone is in 5 years, look at the 5 closest people to them. You know, if you embrace new people in your life, new learners in your life, what's it going to add? You know, and you need to challenge yourself and be around like-minded people that will lift you up. Because some of us, you know, even when we go to the people we love the most, they may not be the most supportive at that time. And you may not have cultivated that in them either.
Well, we had a conversation with someone last week who was sharing with us that they had a view that their friendship circle had a vested interest in not wanting them to change. Because as soon as they changed, then that reflects back on the friendship circle and their resistance to change.
True.
And so it's an interesting one, and it's really brave to change your friendship circle.
Very much.
It's destabilizing at some level, but the person we spoke with said that for every one person they left behind and they feared their critique, they gained 10 amazing new friends somewhere else around the globe. But you can't see that sometimes at the time. It just feels paralysing, right?
Yeah, and we're stuck in our stories, you know, in our head.
Do you want to share some more about that? What do you mean by stuck in our stories in our head?
Well, that was probably one of the biggest things I've learned from the Liberated program, is just how huge the stories in our life are and how our behaviours and patterns reinforce it all, and how it impacts on that as well. And, you know, it's hard to unravel what the story is about a particular person, about a situation, about your life. And you have to be kind of a little bit bold and inquisitive and mindful and think about, well, what's really happening here? And I have my story, but what about their story? What's happening for them as well? And it's made me more compassionate and being able to kind of understand others, which in turn drives that compassion back to you. And go, actually, it's okay to be a fool occasionally or not get it. It's okay not to get it, because in business I've had this control imperative. Then I thought, I have to understand, I need to understand it better than everyone else. And I don't. I don't. I just got to keep trying and not be afraid to make bold mistakes.
So you're saying that once upon a time you thought you had to be quicker, smarter, better, and that's not how it is for you anymore? Is that what you're saying? Or that you catch yourself when that accidentally
that would be
pops
more
up?
accurate. Yeah, you know, it's like, I'm definitely no guru, but and it might take 3 or 4 failures, but then you go, oh God, I've caught myself doing it again, and just let go a bit. Back to that conversation. It was so deep and meaningful that time for me to go, give that a chance to happen again in your life. Like, you don't know everything. You simply don't.
What a relief.
I know. You're not as smart. You don't need to be as smart as you. There's other smart people in the world, and let them into your life. Let them contribute and give them their own journey. And these outcomes that we're attached to, maybe they're not that important anyway.
So it's interesting. This conversation is fascinating because, you know, what I'm listening to there, you know, identity is at risk when we think about wanting to reinvent ourselves. You know, oh my God, what does that mean for me, and the story I have about myself, and the story and my assessment that the story that others have about me, and oh my God, what if I shift? You know, who will I become? But, you know, one of our mentors, you know, Fernando, would say that, you know, great things are achieved when we risk our identity. And so often we get resigned, go, no, I'm not going to change, because there's something there that we're not prepared to risk. We're not courageous enough. And sometimes, you know, we even know the consequences of not changing, but for some reason, we don't want to let go, you know, to our peril sometimes and often. And when that mood of resignation becomes embedded, we start to lose hope. You know, and what I'm listening to there, Dan, is that you are, in your generative mindset, is that you create the conditions, or have learned to create the conditions, always seeking possibility. And there is hope because you have the capacity to generate that.
Yeah, well put. Really well put. I don't know if I would have described it as that. I think I've always been being able to do that, but it's just the way little things show up when you're in business. You know, we took over some cafes early on, and I saw the old, you know, guys doing it. You think, I don't want to be like that. You know, they've been working from, you know, they leave home and it's dark, they get home and it's dark. One of them said to me one time, I didn't see the colour of my child's eyes for 4 years. You know, and I hope he was exaggerating. It was a bit soul crushing.
Yeah.
And we were just young guys starting out. But I kind of knew very quickly that I loved it and it was necessary and we wanted to be doing it, but I didn't want to do it at 65.
Yeah.
And I wanted to create an opportunity for me to be doing something I was really encouraging and happy doing. And so kind of that did lead us out of cafes only about 5 or 6 years later, and started that path. And because I knew that the longer you do something, the deeper the groove.
Yeah.
It's harder to bump yourself out of it. And
Nice point.
so 20 years on, it's a bit of a groove for me, but I had to reinvent a few times and done some things on the side and to keep ourselves alive and kind of challenged.
Yeah. You
Dan,
mean
which we
intellectually alive?
Well, yeah, and consulting work and bringing it back to the business.
Yeah.
And like I was kind of touching on before about to stop yourself getting stale, but without kind of losing sight.
Then not only the groove of business when we can't get ourselves out of that deep trench after a long period of time, but not being able to move on from those negative, unconstructive stories that we have about ourselves that we are so wedded to sometimes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
You know, so it's sort of that, again, that ecosystem. If we think it's about the business, it's about us.
Yeah.
You know, because we are the business. You make that point
We
beautifully.
really are. In small business, it's what makes you great, and it can what make you terrible as well. It's a double-edged sword.
But I think the interesting thing is that often as a business owner, we're business owners, we've been doing this for 13 years now. You can't see it because you're in it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's difficult. You know, it can feel like we're having this conceptual conversation, but we're not. It's a feeling, it's an exhaustion, I can't get my head above to even think about that when you own the business, because you're there flogging yourself trying to help the business perform. How did you get out of that? You talked about fatigue and you said, you know, I love to learn, but I have this sense that there was a time where it was really tough. And how did you dig up out of that time of feeling like you were on the hamster run? I know you've reinvented, but for anyone that's out there going, you know what, this is all good, but I'm in it. And I have no clue about that first step. How did you get up and out of that?
I wish there was a silver bullet I could throw out there and say, this is how you do it. Just do this. But it probably was just an accumulation of reading, just exposing yourself to ideas bigger than your life.
Okay, so these are Dan's
Tips.
5
Exactly. Reading.
Go, Dan.
Reading.
No
so
pressure.
exposing other industries, other things that are going on. Get out of your box.
And business books, personal development books, and then just some fiction. Just a bit of escapism.
But a light.
Yeah, that's right. Whether you do that through books, film, whatever your kind of thing is.
Is that what you meant by creating before? You said
a little bit.
Creative outlet. You mentioned a creative outlet. Is that the kind of thing you were talking about?
Just finding that space to let your mind wander again.
Right, yeah.
And the gym was always important, like just exercise. And I figured out that was like a meditation for me. You know, I hate walking in, but I love walking out. You know, and every time I walk out, I go, God, all the things I had walking in, they were so much better now. And it's a bit of a mind game, but you just love that feeling because it's always tired when we started out in cafes, and just something had to give. I was at that breaking point. There was something in my life, my habits, the way I'm conducting myself, something's wrong. I can't keep going on. So that was one of the most profound shifts. Learning about that and getting more into the gym, and just whenever I could to try and making a habit of it. Just to kind of work out what was in between my ears, really. Because obviously you can't tell by looking that I've been going to the gym. But it was very, very kind of useful to kind of clear my head.
Yeah. Dan, I think you touch on a good point there too, is that I don't think that I've met a single business person who doesn't care. I think sometimes their care is misdirected. I think they can over-care about their business until, you know, even that deep resignation and depression comes about. It's not that they care, they're just exhausted.
It's not that they don't care.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's not that they don't care.
They're
They care
exhausted.
enormously.
Yeah,
they're
that's
just
right.
exhausted, you know. But what you did just then was beautiful, because you're saying, well, I was deeply caring about my business, but I wasn't caring about me. And I had to switch the care back to me, get myself well so that my business can thrive.
Yeah, and who you're bringing home to your family as well.
Right.
You know, because you want to have time for your kids. You know, and you know, you grow up in a certain life and you think, okay, well, there's parts about that I loved and parts about that I want to try and do better as a parent, as a father, as a mum. So you're just trying to make yourself available, because I do have a proclivity to kind of get a bit absorbed and work too hard.
I think you're talking there about a bit of work-life balance, right?
Correct.
You know, that
Correct.
word that we don't often use in small business, you know.
Well, if I figure it out, I'll tell you. Balances.
Well, you know, we're all about work-life balance,
Yeah.
because we've just come out of a work-life balance month, okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Look, and that's all part of it, and part of the reasons why you want to do these things.
Yeah.
For yourself, for your family, and ultimately, again, for your business, because it goes in bursts. There will be in business, we can recall just periods of just extreme hard work when you know you're not going to see daylight. But it's short term, you know, and I don't know many people in small business that in the beginning particularly go every 7 days my life's going to be balanced. It's more like seasons of the year to go, actually, it's going to be 3 months of stress. I'm about to take on a new business and there's no way out of this. This is going to hurt.
And you
and
know
I've had that conversation before.
Yeah.
You know, when we took on businesses and you have to come home and say, this is going to be tough.
Yep.
Let's not
The
set
family
false
conversation.
Correct.
I'm going to be a bit absent
And
for the next few
and
months.
better. It used to be like, oh God, this is going to be a year. And then as we take over more businesses, it got a bit easier and simpler, thank God. So, yeah, just in terms of how you sometimes view it. And as you get older and you're doing it longer and you've got better teams and you build yourself into a better place, then it becomes more of a, you know what, it was a good week or a good month, rather than, wow, it's been 4 months since I've had a weekend kind of thing.
You know, Dan, this is a really odd tangent, but it fits exactly with what you're saying. You just said better teams. And Tony and I were watching a documentary on World War One and how quickly they mobilised young boys from the street to be war ready. And we were fascinated. It was a 6 weeks turnaround. But, you know, what we're not talking about is war. What we are talking about is our fascination with upskilling teams. What is it that you've been doing that gets you from 1 year of what you call, it's going to be 1 year of incredible pain as a family? Well, it's now just 3 months. We've managed to reduce that. Is it something you're doing inside your business that's different? Or is it something that you've learned in terms of building skills and practices? Is it different conversations that you're having?
All of the above.
So is there any part of the formula you'd like to share? Because I think for anyone out there listening, if you could give us a shortcut to what it is to build a great team as quickly as you can with a shared language, we'd love to hear that. What is it? What are the special practices you bring to life in your business with Anthony that enables you to help people team?
And we're going to make this one of your tips too.
Okay. Look, great question. And when we started taking over, I think it was important to have one message, to start out with just a single unifying message, to keep it simple and to drive hard and deep on that kind of that singularity in the beginning. I remember we took over one business and we juggled it. So I would go there, Ant would go there, and then his younger brother, who was helping us at the time, would go there. And each one of us just had a little shift in what the message we were delivering. And every time I went there, it was just off pitch a bit. It just wasn't quite what I thought it should be. Then Anthony would go, that wasn't quite what he thought it should be. And we regrouped and said, actually, we need a way.
Was this the setup of the Boost juice with the pineapple display?
No.
Oh, right. Because it sounds like that story, right? Where you wanted it done exactly this way and someone else wanted it done slightly differently, and the display looked different.
Exactly the same kind of idea. But we just realised we needed one way to communicate and to drive deep on it. And then understanding the value of people in the first place. Like what we're talking about is almost ahead of where I was. You know, we just thought, actually, team is everything. We have to recognise that early, really hard early. And it's hard because what we learned was 30% will grow because they weren't being valued. The middle 30% will change if you lead them properly. And the bottom 30% won't change at all and probably need to go. And you have to be really brave making those calls. But you have to be really committed within yourself and to those people to make sure you get those decisions right. So it's just not better going. You have to be hard working at it. It takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
You can't just go in and be lazy and like, you're crap, go.
Yeah.
Because it turns out you're probably the one with the problem as a leader. Make sure you're leading them right, asking the right questions, turning up and doing the right things, and giving them the opportunity. Because there's been some wonderful people that the previous business owner went, they're terrible, they're terrible, and they're terrible. As soon as he went, they were the three that are still there 2 years later, leading the business. I can think of multiple times that has happened.
Yeah.
So if a tired old man turns around and says, they're bad, keep them. They're probably good. As soon as that old person gets out, they're probably going to flourish, because the flower has suddenly found sunlight.
Do you think they're old in just body, or do you think they're old in attitude?
I'm using the term because that's the mood it evokes when I think about people like that.
Tired old man are the three words, and I was like, all woman. But it's actually, it's. Do you want to talk about that? So when you think about them, it's about how they show up. We call it how they show up as a leader.
That's the resignation and fatigue
so
we're talking
fatigued, resigned, no possibilities. We've done that before. God,
I feel tired you just talking about it.
Right? So your responsibility as a leader, if you even identify with the idea that, I might be feeling like that, that could be a little bit like me, then is to be able to rewrite that script.
Oh, 100%.
And that's what we call reinventing.
Yeah.
It's actually recognizing.
And that's an easy bit because you turn up with more energy. How are you showing up to your team? What are the conversations you're having when you care versus when you don't? Come to work every day and say, business is terrible. God, we fell short again today. And it just seeps into the culture. Yeah. It seeps into their bones. And they're not proud of what they're doing. Yeah. And no one wants to exist like that. And then no one's thinking of possibilities. It's just a total shutdown.
How would you flip it? So, say for example, you were coming into a business. How would you help other business owners out there create a formula for, here's the success formula for how you engage a team from the get-go. What's three things that you would be saying when you show up to a new business, you're coming in as a franchisee or you're coming in as an owner, here are three things you must attend to in order to onboard your team as quickly as possible.
Okay, no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure, but it's an unplanned question.
Yeah, it is. So I think it's important to start out with conversations. I think the conversations you have are going to be 1, 2, and 3, honestly.
Like a one-on-one? Or?
All of the above.
Yeah, and a one-to-many?
We often start with team meetings just to get everyone on board and put them at ease and let them understand us and who we are a little bit and vice versa. The power will come beyond that when you get to the one-on-one. And the first time around, it'll probably be a bit light on. Like it's hard for them to, so they're kids and you're taking over the business and it's difficult, but with your investment will become their engagement. But without your investment, you won't get anything back. So showing up and caring, like you've said before, is crucial to them. And then you'll start spending money on the business and showing up with positive energy, and they're going to reflect on that. When you hire a new team, or in our case, if you have an existing store, we would train people beforehand. So it's nice to have a wedge into the business. So we've trained a lot of Boost stores over the years, and we've really encouraged them to just have that nucleus. Don't be dropping an aspirin in a swimming pool. You step in and you're in someone else's fish pond. And you're just going to fizzle out. Yeah,
you need a bath bomb.
If you walk in, correct. If you walk in with 2 or 3 people, leaders particularly, or people you can groom very quickly and get them on board your journey, your goal, they're going to be the spearhead. That's the wedge that will drive improvement and change. But if you can't create that wedge quickly, you're in trouble. That is really pivotal. Okay. Getting onboarding those teams, getting them on to where you want to go, and then setting up a system that reflects that. Is important. Talk is cheap, and people will give you the benefit of that for about a month, and then rightio. So if they need a bonus, if you need to do a staff party, if you need whatever those things are, and there's 100,000 ideas, back it up with that to reward the process.
Nice. So you've given us 4. 1, conversations, one-on-one, and then one-to-many as soon as you can, but put them at ease. The second is showing up with positive energy. Show up in a mood of possibility and we can do this. The third is train them beforehand, groom them and get them on board as soon as you can. And then finally setting up a system that reflects that. And I love that, talk is cheap. So Dan's top 4 tips to start teaming when you're taking over a new business. And if you can get those things happening, within the first month, then you're off and away.
Yeah, look, month will fly.
Yeah.
It usually will take a good 3 months. It's just over, 3 months and you might see sunlight again.
Yeah.
When you take over some of the franchise stores.
Yeah.
But just be patient with yourself, and it will change. And particularly if you're taking on a team that has pre-existed, you really are stepping else into someone else's fish pond, and it takes time for the water to change. You can't just flush it out as all the fish will die. You do have to give yourself time and patience, and be strong in yourself.
Dan, there's another side to this, and I love those four orientations, 4 tips of coming into a business, whether it's existing or new, but often business people, and I've seen it, I've done it myself, is that we come in with one thing in mind, and that is revenue. We're going to get money in, and everything else, including staff, are secondary to that. Now, what I've learned is that is a disaster. That's never going to work. And so, by taking care of your people the way that you've learnt, you're actually taking care of your revenue anyway. But I think that the point that I want to make is that we can become too focused on the dollars when we've got to really take a step back and go, well, hang on a minute. Who was actually making the dollars in this business? Who is those front people there 100%. Building relationships?
Well, they're taking the money. They're literally taking the money.
They are the business, those front line
it could
people.
Be, look, we're always going to be sales oriented, but you just need to be holistic in the approach to get to that, and take people on the journey and get them on board the team.
Take a wider
exactly
view
what you're saying is because I can't be in 5 stores every day. I'm serving every single customer, and they probably don't want that anyway. They love our team. They want to see the young kids having a go, and the support we give them will come back, and they'll get on board and realise that we do have to support the business that's paying the wage.
And there might be another distinction for our listeners out there as well, is that when you're not making requests or delegating and doing it all yourself, and not harnessing the brilliance of your team and the wisdom and skill of your team, no wonder some people are fatigued, right?
Oh, all day.
And then you're not setting your business up to scale, you're setting up to reduce. Because we haven't learned those skills to delegate and to trust and build those trusting relationships within the teams that we lead as business owners.
Yeah, I guess really early on, Ant and I used to have a saying, I haven't used it for years, but it was blame yourself first. And it's nothing new, I'm sure you've heard it elsewhere, but it was just about that. When you see a team member fail or something's wrong in your store, which happened to me just this week, a minor breakdown, and I thought, actually, you've just got to start with yourself. What have you done wrong? Did you teach this guy how to do something right? Or have you just expected it? How good was your communication? And there's some great moments and there's some flaws, some real deep flaws as well. So it's just an avenue for you to, you're going to get overwhelmed and feel fatigued if you get in business too long, but challenge yourself to challenge your team and give them a bit of space to breathe and get better at delivering that message and be a better leader and be a better trainer. So that you're not going to be Johnny on the spot. Challenge them to not call you on the first problem they have if you've trained them properly. That's the commitment and investment you need to make. It's not about just turning off the phone, but
and it's not only just the training, it's the relationship that you have with them.
Absolutely.
That they have with you, the trust, the mutual trust that
yeah, and you've got to build that, and that's earned.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I've found really interesting in the last little while? So we've been doing a couple of jobs inside big organisations, and our organisation is also living the same thing, is what happens when you harness the brilliance of the younger folk inside the business and let them free. And it's not to say that's boundaryless, but what it is to say is to equip them with skills and practices to have conversations, to pitch ideas, to share concerns, and then allow them to show up. And what I've learned is that they can run the business probably just as competently as we can run our business. And now they run our business. And what we've started to see inside some of the bigger organisations is the mood of ambition and possibility that exists inside these upcoming emerging leaders. It's like a wave. And then sometimes it's inspiring,
it's invigorating to see it. Actually, it's very rewarding.
And so to actually harness that and know that they are part of the future answer. You can't do this on your own if you don't have the distinctions of what it is to be in the different age profiles of your business, to bring it all together and go, everybody, we're all in this. We make these decisions together. We have these conversations together. I think it's the most exciting part of what's possible for organisations of the future, and it doesn't matter about the size of them. It's, are we harnessing the creative intelligence of everybody here, and who am I being as the leader in the space that I create for that to happen?
Check your ego.
Totally.
Just let go. Just check your ego at the door and let someone else shine.
Yeah.
And be open to the fact that there's more than one way to get. And Anthony and I are chalk and cheese. You can give us a goal and we'll both get there, but by God will we take different routes. But we'll see each other at the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
It was a really important lesson.
Yes.
To go, actually, that exists for my team as well.
Yeah.
And it comes and goes in waves. You'll have guys working for you and young women working, and you think, oh, wow, they've really stopped growing, and something will shift in you as the leader or the business. It may not even be you doing it, and they'll just catapult all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And just to be mindful that people grow and then they stop and then they grow again. It's not a linear path sometime, and to be open to that change, because I've just had one girl in particular I'm thinking of. I had some frustrations on the leadership journey, and now she's come back and settled in and just absolutely smashing it.
Yeah.
I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, your time's not their time.
The challenge was on me to accept that, to be open to that early on. I think I was holding her back, actually.
How interesting.
It comes back to that diversity too. What you were sharing about you and Ant. You both get to the top of the mountain, but there's two different paths you take. But that's been your success formula.
Yeah, it kind of really has.
That diverse thinking, that challenge, because if we're not challenged in business or not open to be challenged, then we're a danger to ourselves. Because we're putting so much at risk. So being open to that challenge and that provocation of being challenged, which can be hairy at times, right? But I tell you what, that's the point of innovation. That's where something new can spring from. Like a mountain spring. Otherwise, it's the same worn track that you track day in, day out.
I think when you say that, it evokes for me recruitment. I must have hired over 1,000 people. And I still have to challenge those and go, you don't know the outcome. I can't pick great people all the time. I've been doing it for 20 years solid. And I still remind myself that the way they present in an interview is different to the way they're going to present in the second interview, into a group interview, and then the first day in store and the 20th day in store. And they can shine really bright and never improve, or they can come in really slow and then catapult. And the speed with which people learn is not an indicator of how good they're going to get. And you've got to keep challenging, because it's such. If you get recruitment wrong in business, it never forgives you. It's relentless, because you're always looking. Particularly when you get up to 5 stores or more, and you're always looking for good talent. And people go, where do you find them? I go, well, the same place you did. Okay, or didn't, depending on what you're looking for. So we're all fishing in the same pond. It's the attitude we bring to it and the skills that determine who we're harvesting and then what we're doing with that. It's just one thing to get them, and people may have discarded the very same kids that you switch on and engage with, and that's when they take off. But without the opportunity, you're never going to get the best. And I guess that's driving force behind our improvement. Because you want to get better at those things. They make your life easier. Who doesn't want to make their life easier? Well, I don't want to be battling every day.
Well, the thing that impresses me, and although this is a podcast, right? So we don't necessarily have a visual audience unless you're tuning in visually, which we're also recording this. But you're still a young guy. You're a relatively young guy for all of that experience under your belt, right? There's a whole other life ahead of you.
I hope so.
So, what's your next reinvention? What's coming for you? And yes, retail's changing, and you're keeping pace, and you're inventing inside that space, and you're still inside that space. So what's the next reinvention for Dan? What's emerging for you?
Future Dan.
Yeah, the future Dan. We did talk about him.
Good question. Look, I don't have a definitive answer yet. I think it involves helping others in business. It's a strong affinity for sharing that kind of journey with others, and just empathizing and helping people on that journey. I think that would be rewarding and a good way to help give back. Love to be able to keep developing kind of young team members the way we have been, and just providing that space where they can grow that isn't often given to young people, and probably we had to kind of forge for ourselves. A little bit, because in business, no one's leaning over to kind of teach you how to grow. You don't have a learning and development department looking over your shoulder, you know, and we're lucky at Boost we did. And that's been one of those epiphanies going, actually, you know, we need to seek it out for ourselves. If you're a business, you need to chase this down.
It's a lonely journey sometimes.
And some people are smart enough to get business coaches, but ironically, inevitably, the years of consulting I did, I watched the people that need it the most give it up or not do it.
Yeah.
I can't afford it. You can't afford not to.
Yeah,
The
true.
old nugget, you know, and it's so cheap and easy to say, and a lot of people will rage at that statement, but it's just true.
Yeah.
And if you're raging at it, look at yourself.
Yeah.
So, Dan, you know, you've brought us to a beautiful pathway to bring our podcast to an end, and that is what are the consequences of not reinventing yourself as a business? You know, and I think that you've given us a lot of, you know, tips and approaches and philosophy through the school of hard knocks is what I can work out, and I'm sure that we've all got war stories, you know, about being in business and having to deal with, you know, what we call the black dog, you know, depression and fatigue and all of those, but it's been very helpful, I'm sure, you know, in our bringing and drawing our podcast to a close. But Paul, or anything from you as a begin to winding up our conversation?
No, I think the question you asked, Dan, was fantastic. You know, about, you know, can you afford not to? From your unique perspective.
Well, okay, yeah, that's a good point. From my perspective, no, you can't.
Yeah.
Too much is changing.
Yeah.
Look, and there's fundamentals that have remained the same in human nature, and it applies to the young people and old people. But methods of delivery and the way we're behaving in our shopping experiences and retail experiences and where we're working and how we're working are evolving. And some of it's slow and you can see it coming, and sometimes you turn around and it's what was happening is gone and something's replaced it.
Yeah.
So you need to, I think it's about quality of life as well. If you circle the wagons and close your mind, it's always going to be a threat. Everything feels like a threat. And it's a hard place to live.
Yeah.
Because you get estranged from the world, from your life, from your family. It's very isolating. I think you need to challenge yourself to step out a little bit and have the courage to kind of, and it's not going to happen every day. I mean, I've lived through all of it. But if you've got to embrace change as much as you can, you need to seek it as an opportunity. You need to reframe it in your head a little bit about how am I going to move forward, and I want to grow and I want to be that person on the edge, and planning, because it comes down to the way you financed your business and what you're putting aside for tomorrow. Because if you don't see change coming and you're spending everything today, when the time for change arrives on your doorstep, well, I haven't got any money to do that. I can't afford to reinvest. But the clever ones are putting aside money because they know that they don't know what's around the corner.
Yeah, nice.
It's okay to feel dumb.
Good distinction.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Nice there.
I like it. It feels like the seasons, right? We don't have summer.
Yeah, correct.
Yet we, you know, predict that that's how our economic life should be. So watch out for that big winter.
Yeah, there's always something.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing that can beat you down. You'll have a really good run, and then I can think some of the best opportunities we've had and the biggest threats came with zero notice.
Yep. Wonderful. What a great, you know, I'd love to tune in to anyone that's listening about some of those big opportunities and times that they've come with no notice period.
Yeah. When you're looking and looking and looking and you think you're so open to it and nothing. And you turn your back on for 1 second and boom. Literally, I can think of a few examples.
So Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on conversation with our Liberating Conversation podcast series, and
I'm honoured to be invited.
Thanks, Dan.
And you know, the quality of the conversation, in my assessment, may have for some of our listeners stirred something up. Particularly, we're talking about depression and fatigue and stuck in a rut. But I'd really encourage anybody, if they're feeling a little bit at odds with themselves, to reach out to somebody to open a conversation, whether that's Beyond Blue or other conversations with professional people, because it's just a conversation, you know, and would really encourage people to do that. And Paula, thank you. But how can people get in touch with you, Dan? Have you got a social media handle like
LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is probably
LinkedIn.
Hunt you down on
best way now to
LinkedIn.
say
how
that.
do they find you on LinkedIn?
Oh, just by my name.
Daniel
on there.
Mesiti.
Daniel Mesiti.
And will it reference you as a Boost Juice franchisee?
Yes, it will.
Okay, so that's
All
what
my kind of
Daniel Mesiti
almost
Boost
sins
Juice.
and successes are on there.
Excellent, excellent. You know, and Dan, just in closing, I had a wild idea of a leadership academy. There's something you know about how to bring young people on the journey, and I think that we should keep that conversation alive
That'd be wonderful.
about, you know, what
That'd
is
be
this?
really
It's
good.
like, you know, big skills investment early in the piece for, and I just want to open that as an opportunity. I also heard you talk about you being a business coach. I want to open that opportunity here for those people that would value being in a conversation with Daniel. He's for hire. So get in contact via LinkedIn. And let's see what comes of that, because this is because you want to make a contribution. We're well past the needing to talk about money for money's sake. We're in the giving back years, which is such a beautiful thing. Thank you for being in our conversation today.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
We look forward to tuning in some other masterclass coming next March.
That's exciting. That'll be
Excellent.
good.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, guys.